third and fourth unit. So after completion of these 4 units, we discussed and explained about so many educational and psychological factors about the education related and relation to the psychological aspects. Now we are going to discuss today unit the block 3, learning and memory. So learning is an important of our everyday life. In our day-to-day life, we learn different contents by using different ways. So educational psychologist, so Benjamin Bloom's developed a classification of intellectual behavior and learning into the 3 domains or dimensions. The domains will be dominated by all the aspects of the educational settings. So they are cognitive domain and affective domain and psychomotor domain. So there are 6 process dimensions as per revised Bloom's taxonomy. These are, so remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, and create. So these 6 categories are further divided into 19 cognitive processes. Learning may be classified into different categories. The learning of verbal behavior is known as verbal learning, and psychologists use various methods to study the features of verbal learning. We learn many things through observing other people's behavior and attitudes. Here, so based on the learning principles, various learning process. For example, the cognitive, affective, and cognitive. This cognitive process can be involved the learning, the memory, thinking, intellectual capabilities, and so on. So the unit 7 that belongs to the domains of learning. So in this, through this unit, we need to discuss the Bloom's taxonomy, cognitive, affective, and psychological domains. Revised Bloom's taxonomy, what tells us, and based on that, what are the possibilities to receive the various scientists. So here, after completion of this unit, we should be able to define and explain Bloom's taxonomy of cognitive, affective, and psychomotor domain. Also, to aware different types of learning domains such as cognitive, affective, and psychomotor. Sometimes we need to identify the difference between cognitive, affective, and psychomotor domains. So domains of learning. What is domains of learning? Generally, as a part of our day-to-day life, so we learn mental health process by using some skills. By using some skills to develop our attitudes and acquire new physical skills. So these domains of learning can be categorized into 3 categories according to this taxonomy. That is cognitive domain. It is nothing but knowledge based. Whatever comes under knowledge base, that covers cognitive domain. Then affective domain means the attitudes, the affection modes, and psychomotor domains. These psychomotor domains purely related to skills. So knowledge, then attitudes based on the knowledge, The individual can be developed with their attitudes, and based on their attitude, whether positive or negative, they will be act on the basis of skills, their skills. So what is Bloom's taxonomy? So Benjamin Simon Bloom, the 1913 to 1999, was an American educational psychologist. He made important contribution to the classification of educational objectives and to the theory of learning. Benjamin Bloom's taxonomy is very important in the educational processes. This taxonomy was created in 1956 under the leadership of Benjamin Bloom. So it is generally proposed to promote higher forms of thinking, such as analysis, evaluation, like that. So Bloom's taxonomy of cognitive, affective, and psychomotor domains is hierarchical model, which is used to classify learning objectives. So based on into various levels and complexity and specificity. That is the cognitive domain, affective domain, and psychomotor domain. So what is cognitive domain? This domain consists of content to knowledge of a specific subject and intellectual skills. There are 6 major categories in cognitive domains. It includes various cognitive outcomes, which include simple behavior, example, recall or recognition. And that kind of complex behavior, example, the evaluation. So cognitive outcomes often represents the outcome most closely related to deeper thinking and lifelong learning. Lower levels of thinking, it is nothing but simple behavior or easier to access. So the cognitive domains outcomes can be elaborated as what is recall, then comprehension, then application, then analysis, synthesis, evaluation. These 6 are subdomains in the cognitive domain: recall, comprehension, application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. Here, recall, the ability to recall what has been learned previously. The comprehension means the ability to show a basic understanding about our ideas of our experiences about the previous ones. Then application. It deals with ability to apply learning to a new or novel task. That is very important. So application is nothing but to apply our learned behavior, learned skills, a new or novel task. Then analysis. The ability to break up information logically. Finally, evaluation. The ability to evaluate the usefulness of something for a purpose. These are all mainly comes under cognitive domains. Then coming to affective domain. The affective domains, the majorly consist of feelings, values, appreciations, and enthusiasm, so motivation, attitude, like so, etc. These domain outcomes generally tend to be hardest to articulate initially and often appear very difficult to assess at the first glance. So mostly this affective domain outcomes can be elaborated as uh, the students become aware of an attitude, behavior, or value in their day-to-day life. That is first thing. Then secondly, learners or students exhibited a reaction or change as a result of exposure to an attitude. And third one, students recognize value and display their through involvement or commitment in their day-to-day life. Also, the fourth one, students or learners determine a new value or behaviors as important or a priority in their day-to-day life. So finally, fifth one, learners integrate consistent behavior as a naturalized value in spite of discomfort or cost. So these are all under the affective domain. So coming to psychomotor domain. Here are some of the concepts about psychomotor abilities. These psychomotor abilities comes under various models. What are these? The psychomotor domains defines physical skills or tasks. The psychomotor domains consist of use of the gross and fine motor skills. such as physical movement and coordination. The psychomotor domains learning outcomes are related to the skills you can observe. So generally, the psychomotor domains outcomes can be elaborated as below. For example, the learners translate the sensory input into physical tasks or activities in their day-to-day life. Based on these skills, learners translate so many sensory input. Then second thing, the learners or students are able to replay or replace or replicate the fundamental skills or task in their day-to-day life. Sometimes they recognize standards or criteria of important to perform a skill or task. If they did wrongly, they may correct right way in their day-to-day life. So here, such kind of the learners use standards to evaluate their own performances and make corrections in their day-to-day life. Also, they apply these skills to real-life situations in their day-to-day life. Finally, based on the psychomotor domain application is the learners are able to instruct or train others to perform their skills in other situations in their day-to-day life. So these are all that comes under the psychomotor domains. So already based on this Bloom's taxonomy, so cognitive, affective, and psychomotor. Simply we can remember this. Cognitive means knowledge based. Then affective means attitudinal based or the affections based. The psychomotor means skills. Purely comes under skills. After some time, the revised Bloom's taxonomy will be developed. A group of psychologists, curriculum theorists, instructional researchers, testing and assessment specialists, etc., are published revised Bloom's taxonomy in 2001, generally. 2001. So title of the revised Bloom taxonomy is a taxonomy for teaching. After revised Bloom taxonomy, it can be changed as a taxonomy of teaching, learning, and assessment. So according to Anderson and Croth, the following are the 6 process of domains in revised Bloom's taxonomy. So what are the 6 domains according to revised Bloom's taxonomy? The first one is remember. Second, understand. Third, apply. Fourth, analyze. Fifth, evaluate. And sixth, create. Remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, and create. So what is remember? Remembering is usually called knowledge. Previously, that is comes under cognitive. So remembering is usually called knowledge. It is related to the information, the things which we have heard, viewed, or read. It reflects the interpretation or summarization of the ideas in our own words. So example, the different differentiating the Bloom's taxonomy with the revised taxonomy. So elaborating the main concepts of psychology. Then coming to the understanding. Understanding is usually called comprehension. Right. So apply. Applying is usually called application. It is related to applying an abstract idea in a concrete situation to solve a specific problem or related to the prior experience of an individual. So example, demonstrating a principle with day-to-day activities or showing examples of concepts relating to actions. Then analyze. So analysis is used called, it is related to breaking or break down a concept or idea into parts or showing relationships among the parts. Example, comprehension and comparison between different branches of psychology, discussing the pros and cons of the theory, like that. So evaluate. In this evaluation is related to making informed judgments. The judgments about the value of ideas or materials and using the learners and criteria to support opinions and views. Finally, create. The creation is usually called synthesis. It is related to bringing together parts of the knowledge of a particular concept from old and building relationship for new situations. For example, so suggesting the alternatives to an idea, explaining the reasons of a particular action. The cognitive process domains include a continuum of increasing complexity from the lower order thinking to higher order thinking skills, such as remembering to creating. So in this Bloom's taxonomy of learning, it is nothing but revised Bloom's taxonomy of learning. The baseline, the remembering will be occurred. That's why it is called as a hierarchy. After baseline, the learner can understanding or comprehension. After comprehension of the knowledge, you need to be applying in various situations. After application of various the concepts, that learner can be analysis that kind of knowledge. Whatever applied, that can be analyzing, then evaluating, then creating. Here, some of the tables shown about this revised Bloom's taxonomy. In the process of the remembering, major processes, the recognition and recalling will be happened. And in that one sub-process, so identifying, retrieving, clarifying, paraphrasing, will be using further some major process in the process of domains. So coming to understanding, here we need to use the major processes. So interpreting, understanding, based on this understanding, we need to interpreting, then exemplifying, so classifying, summarizing, and inferring, then comparing and explaining. Here also some of the sub-process will be involved. So many sub-processes. For example, representing, translating, illustrating, instanting, categorizing. So abstracting, like that. So concluding also comes under this. Then apply. Apply here, the main processor are executing or implementing. So subclasses, so carry out or using out. So these are belongs to the subcategories of these things. Now, the remaining analysis. Here differentiating based on the analysis. So differentiating, the organizing, attributing. What are the sub-process in this analysis? Discriminating, distinguishing, focusing, selecting, finding, and coherence, like that. So another domain, another concept, evaluate. It is nothing but process, the checking process, and checking and critiquing. Here some of the sub processes. So coordinating, detecting, monitoring, testing, and judging. So finally creating or create. Here generating, main process, planning, and producing. Sub processes in creating, hypothesizing, designing, constructing. So these are all to comes under revised Bloom's taxonomy components. So the process dimensions refer to the probable cognitive process which takes place in the mind during a learning process. The processes which are listed in the above table we are discussed now, indicate the acquisition of particular cognitive skills by a learner in the process of learning. For example, in the process of dimension of remember, a learner can recognize or recall or identify or retrieve certain information and concept in the process of learning. In the example 2, in the process of dimension of evaluate, a learner can judge the received information and concept in the process of learning. Like this. So the major use of these dimensions is that a teacher can formulate learning objectives in accordance with the processes which takes place in the corresponding process of domains. The process suggested in revised Bloom's taxonomy is very useful and support the teachers in everyday teaching learning process. So all the educational objectives are to be achieved through the effective use of various subject and that subject contents through proper design and practice based on process oriented revised Bloom's taxonomy. Here, framing objectives in accordance to the process dimensions. While setting instructional objectives, it is required to take some processes dimensions into the consideration. For example, the process dimensions, remember, that refers to lower level cognitive functions such as recognizing, recalling, identifying, and retrieving. So, in this way, the teachers should plan learning activities in such a way they help the individual learners to recall and recognize the relevant aspects. The carefully planned process will help the students to understand and apply the content and concepts to suitable situations. Then, finally, according to this Bloom's taxonomy, what we learned, the revised and Bloom's taxonomy. So, in order to day-to-day life, we learn different contents by using different ways. So, educational psychologists to Benjamin Bloom's develop classification of intellectual behavior and learning into three domains. They are cognitive domain, affective domain, and psychomotor domain. So there is a domains after sometimes revisedly. There are 6 major categories in cognitive domain. They are recall, comprehension, application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. The affective domain comes under the majorly consist of feelings, values, appreciations, enthusiasm, motivation, attitude, etc. With this, we can conclude about today's discussion. Based on today's discussion, we learned various concepts relating to 3 domains of Bloom's taxonomy. After the careful scientific analysis, it can be divided into or revised Bloom's taxonomy. It is called the taxonomy of teaching learning process. It is renamed as taxonomy of teaching learning process. Here, only 6 components or 6 domains. That is remembering, then understanding, then apply, analysis, then evaluate, then finally creating. As a learner as well as a student need to be understand about this learning domains, that is unit 7. It is very important to know the various cognitive, affective, and psychomotor domains. So upcoming examinations, the student need to plan to write an essay about the revised Blues taxonomy. You need to prepare this total 3 dimensions earlier, then 6 concepts later, revised Bloom's taxonomy. You need to brief. With this, you can conclude today's unit. So thank you. Thank you very much.